Remember the good old days when the GOP was the party of fiscal sanity and responsibility? Courtesy of the Surrender Caucus GOP leadership, those days are long gone. The U.S. debt is out of control because the majority in Congress has been bought off, fiscally irresponsible and corrupt. Our nation is now burdened with $33 trillion of debt. The infantile baby boomers who inflicted this suffering onto future generations will all be dead when it comes time to pay the piper for all this. It takes a special kind of sicko, doesn't it, to mortgage your grandchild's future so you can live high on the hog today? And nobody's living higher on the hog getting overpaid for doing shoddy or no work. Nobody is a bigger waste of your labor than the bloated, unresponsive, and selfish U.S. government. The unspoken threat, government's massive overspending. That's the alarm we sound in today's preamble. Under the last 4 presidents and occupiers of the Oval Office, both parties, they have combined to add $24 trillion to our national debt. Congressional majorities have been held by both political parties in that same time frame. A precious few are concentrating on the debt. In fact, in recent years, the Uniparty has simply agreed to spend whatever the hell they want on everything. Grown-ups are not in the majority to do the adult thing and prioritize spending commensurate to what we the people give that government through our taxes. No voter told the Congress they could overspend. They just do it. If all of the Uniparty's proposed spending occurs, the federal debt is likely to exceed our nation's annual GDP by hitting as high as 125% of our gross domestic product in a few short years. This would surpass the debt to GDP ratio in the years immediately following World War II. The difference between now and then is that back then we had a majority in our government who were dedicated to the preservation of our nation, not foreign nations like China. Overspending hurts our country in several key ways. As the debt grows bigger and interest rates rise, our tax dollars are forced to pay for ever-ballooning interest payments on that debt. That leaves fewer dollars for defense and essential constitutional parts of the government. Large government deficits and debt also increase the risk of sustained inflation that acts as a tax on everybody. Unexpected inflation creates uncertainty for investors, which results in less investment and thus retards economic growth. Too much spending also reduces innovation by crowding out private sector investment. At this point, I should tell you that contrary to what the biased press will tell you, tax cuts do not produce debt and deficits. Only overspending, spending money we don't have, produces debts and deficits. Think of it this way. We the people are the employers of our government. We agree to a level of spending that we collectively think is appropriate. We hire lawmakers to use that finite dollar figure to fund only essential and constitutional functions of government. Yet your government spends way more. It is that overspending, and only that overspending, that causes dangerous debt and deficits. We the people shouldn't have to work harder to fund every selfish want and desire of big, unaccountable government. Instead, our elected officials, if they were grown-ups, should trim their spending to meet the budget we have given them through our taxes. If they can't do that, they should resign. If they don't resign, they should be voted out. Fast forward to yet another inflection point for the GOP to prove they can govern and keep faith with the voters who put them in the majority. Because the House has failed to produce 12 spending bills to fund our government, something called regular order, there's a push for a continuing resolution. Now, that's a fake budget designed to keep government spending at unacceptably high and dangerous levels with no accountability. I should point out that in the past, our Congress was run by a majority of grown-ups who were able to complete this task of regular order, a task they are legally required to accomplish. But for some reason, our people have decided to send people to Washington who are not there to work for a living. With leaders like Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn of Texas and their ideological companions in the House, the current crop of politicians simply abdicate their legal and constitutional responsibilities under the knowledge that too few Americans care or even aware of their corrupt CR and omnibus spending splurges. We saw evidence of this from 18 Senate Republicans led by Mitch McConnell and the aforementioned John Cornyn, who needlessly and irresponsibly gave Democrats everything they wanted. codifying dangerous post-China virus levels of spending, including open border funding and a $1.8 trillion omnibus vote. That was less than a year ago, and nearly $2 trillion already up in smoke. Now we have to pass a continuing resolution to keep the government open? Congressman Dan Bishop joined Congressman Corey Mills, Matt Gaetz, Ralph Norman, Tim Burchett, Tony Gonzalez, big surprise there, Eli Crane, and others to demand that the GOP finally take a stand and roll back profligate government spending to pre-China virus levels. Even that is a baby step, considering that spending in 2020 was unacceptably high as well. According to data from the Office of Management and Budget, our greedy government's confiscation of our hard-earned money from payroll and income taxes grew more in the last 2 years than any time since at least 1980. That means that the Biden regime, with the help of the GOP, is trying to change the relationship between taxpayer and government in the United States. They want to put you to work, funding their crazy and selfish priorities, not funding the priorities for your own individual families. And the GOP and Democrats have colluded to add 87 million armed IRS agents to make sure you get on board with that agenda. We've seen this dynamic before in communist countries, where the people are forced to work to make sure those in government never have to take a pay cut. And then workers and their families have to try and make ends meet with what little the government allows them to keep. That is unsustainable and un-American. You might want to let your non-representing representatives and senators know you're not in favor of the change that they are trying to push.